Hit the one and I forget it. You ever heard that song on the radio? Probably not. It was Corey wrote that. Is that awesome? Right? You think you're just thankful? She's very nervous by the way. So, very cool today. One other thing, before we begin with the sermon, we're getting back with the kids' Bible time during the service. So if parents, if you have kids age 3 to 8 or so, they'd like waiting at the door, and they will take you, your kids, I should say, to the kids' Bible time in the Eagle's Nest. And you can pick them up there after the service. It's just down that hallway straight from those doors off to the right-hand side. All right. For the rest of us who will remain here, what is that a picture of? Anybody remember that? Tiananmen Square. Where is that located? Anybody know? What's that? Beijing, China, right? Yeah, Beijing, China. And this was this is 25 years ago now. That's why I had to ask if some people remember this or not, because some of you weren't born yet. There's a man standing in front of 4 tanks. By the way, this is just a picture. They were actually moving, and they got right up close to him. And frankly, he just kind of stared them down, and he was ready to die because of the oppression of the Chinese government. There was kind of a democracy movement going on at the time, and they let it go for about 7 weeks, and it started popping up all over in all the major cities in China. And then eventually they sent in the military, they sent in soldiers, they sent in tanks, and hundreds and perhaps thousands of people died throughout China in June of 1989. Right? The reason I bring this up is, do you think you could be that guy? He's got some pretty strong convictions there to be standing in front of a tank, which could very easily kill him. The interesting thing is that we face a fiercer enemy than any tank. We're on this earth at a time when, frankly, the devil is after us, like that roaring lion, seeking to devour us, take our soul to be with him forever. It's hard for us to stand up for our faith. It's hard for us to put that faith into practice in our everyday lives. Sometimes, frankly, it might seem like we're against all odds as we do that. But today we're going to be receiving some encouragement in the Old Testament from the life of Moses. We've just looked at the life of Joseph in the Old Testament. Now we're fast forwarding about 400 years, as I had mentioned, to now looking at the life of Moses to see how God worked in his life to encourage him to live out the calling that God had given to him, which is interesting because Moses, frankly, had his own ideas in some parts of his life. The first part of his life, he kind of took matters into his own hands. He ended up murdering an Egyptian slave master. He was trying to free the Israelite slaves, his brothers and sisters, by himself without God's okay or say so. And as a result, he pretty much messed up his whole life. So he went in the opposite direction, fled from Egypt, even though he was a prince of Egypt, raised in the Pharaoh's household, and he went to Midian, where he was a shepherd for the next 40 years. So he goes from trying to take matters into his own hands, Act 1 of his life, first 40 years, then totally saying, I don't even want to have anything to do with trying to do what I probably should be doing. So he just ran away for the next 40 years. And it's at age 80 when God finally appeared to him in a burning bush to say, now is the time that I have some plans, very specific plans for you, Moses. And that's where we pick it up in Exodus chapter 3. Excuse me. This is Exodus chapter 3, starting at verse 1. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, "Moses, Moses." And Moses said, "Here I am." "Do not come any closer," God said. "Take off your sandals, for the place you are standing is holy ground." Then he said, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, "I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hands of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now, go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." But Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" And God said, "I will be with you, and this will be the sign that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain." Moses said to God, Suppose I go to the Israelites and I say to them, "The God of your fathers has sent me to you," and they ask me, "What is his name?" Then what shall I tell them? God said to Moses, "I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you." God also said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites, 'The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name you shall call me from generation to generation." This is the word of the Lord. Excuse me. How old was Moses at this time? 80 years old. 80 years old. I think usually, don't we figure that when we reach 80, some of us, don't we figure, I'm kind of done. I think I've had a pretty good long life, and now I'm just going to kind of coast into heaven. And that's exactly the opposite of what God had in store for Moses. Now, granted, Moses lived until he was 120 before he reached the promised land, heaven itself. But for 40 years, God had some very specific plans for his life that he had actually already planned from eternity. And Moses was the guy that God was going to use in a mighty way